Here's your report.
Thanks, Jane. I wish I could hire a whole team of yous.
Try posting a job on LinkedIn. It's the world's largest professional network. Unlike resumes, LinkedIn gives a real-time view into a candidate's skills, experiences, and more.
Let's do it. You're irreplaceable, Jane, but another you would be great.
Find your perfect match with LinkedIn. Post your free job at linkedin.com/achieve. That's linkedin.com/achieve. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello. Welcome to Strong Sense of Place.
In each episode, we focus on one destination and discuss what makes it different than any other place on Earth.
Then we recommend 5 books we love that took us there on the page.
I'm Melissa Jolan.
I'm David Humphreys.
We're going around the world, one great read at a time.
Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Strong Sense of Place. Today we get curious about India. If you're listening to this on release day, welcome to summer. Tomorrow in India, there are celebrations for the life of Kabir Das. He was famous for saying in very clear, precise language that we should all love one another. Today in Two Truths and a Lie, I'm going to talk about dolphin rights. Power to the porpoise. And then we'll talk about 5 books we love.
I'm recommending a book that combines storytelling, history, food, and photography in a way that I have never seen before.
Really? That's cool. I've got a book about a kid who's not sure if the rest of his family is magical.
Sweet.
Yeah. But first, Mel's going to bring us up to speed with the India 101.
I need to preface this whole shebang by saying that one of the first things I read in my research was this line. India is a continent masquerading as a country.
Wow.
Yes. And that kind of became my mantra. Everyone listening might want to keep that in mind as we talk about the vastness that is India. So let's get oriented.
Okay.
India makes up a big chunk of the Asian continent. It's surrounded by water on 3 sides. Shout out to the awesomely named Bay of Bengal.
Yeah.
India shares land borders with 6 countries: Pakistan, China, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and Myanmar.
And they almost share a land bridge with Sri Lanka, which I found out about when I was doing the research for our episode on Sri Lanka.
I forgot about that land bridge.
Yeah.
The Indian Constitution recognizes 22 languages. There are 2 official languages, Hindi,
Namaste,
that's spoken by about 44% of the population, and English.
Hello.
India is the world's 2nd largest English-speaking country after the United States.
Wow.
Yeah. The population is about 1.4 billion people.
That's a lot of people.
Billion with a B.
Yeah.
One guidebook I read said in India, the crush of humanity may turn the simplest task into a frazzling epic.
That kind of tracks with my expectations. There's a lot of people, and they're out.
Mm-hmm. The capital is Delhi, in the north-central part of the country. It's the 2nd largest urban area in the world after Tokyo.
I didn't know that.
I mean, not to be Captain Obvious, but everything is big. Delhi is described in various sources as chaotic and colorful, strange and wonderful, and sharply modern and hazily ancient. And it really does seem to have everything. Ancient forts, mosques and temples, sprawling bazaars, bustling lanes of street food, leafy parks and botanical gardens, and streets just thrumming with cars, rickshaws, bicycles, tuk-tuks, people. It's jumping. India doesn't have an official religion, but more than 80% of Indians are Hindu. About 13% are Muslim. Other religions, which all started in India, include Buddhism, Sikhism, and Jainism. Now we need to briefly talk about the caste system.
Okay.
For more than 3,000 years, Hindus have been divided into hierarchical groups based on their karma, that means work, and dharma, which means duty. The highest caste, or teachers, then warriors and rulers, traders, and at the bottom, menial workers. And then outside of all of that are the untouchables.
Teachers, that's nice, though.
Yeah, isn't that great?
Yeah.
I was really happy when I saw that.
Yeah.
The main castes are divided into 25,000 subcastes based on occupations.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. As you might expect, the upper castes came along with privileges,
Sure.
and the untouchables did tasks that others wouldn't even talk about, like cleaning latrines, removing dead animals from the streets, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The Indian Constitution now bans discrimination based on caste and has outlawed the practice of untouchability. In the cities, things are looser. Different castes live side by side. Intercaste marriages are more common. But in the countryside, the caste system is still pretty strong.
Yeah.
Indian history can be divided into 3 major chunks: ancient, Muslim, and British. When we talk about ancient Indian history, we're really talking about world history. Civilization started thriving in the Indus Valley around 2500 BCE. Here are some Indus Valley fun facts.
Okay.
The Indus Valley civilization was larger than ancient Egypt.
Oh,
They had the first dentists.
that's a scary idea. A prehistoric dentist.
They invented buttons and dice.
Both very useful.
They grew cotton and chickens.
Did they have waffles? Because you can have chicken and waffles if you have waffles.
I didn't see any notations about waffles.
Hmm.
By 1700 BCE, many Indus cities were abandoned. By 1900 BCE, the Indus Valley civilization was kaput, and no one really knows why.
Really?
Uh-huh. Now we jump ahead to the golden age of India. That was during the Gupta Empire. That's around 320 to 550.
Okay.
The arts, literature, math, astronomy all took huge leaps forward. This is where the concept of zero took hold.
I remember being stunned as a kid that somebody invented zero.
Yeah.
Whoa. That's like inventing infinity.
A poet named Kalidasa wrote 2 epic poems in Sanskrit, and astronomers calculated the length of a solar year. Big foundational stuff going on.
Yeah.
In the 16th century, another big leap forward, India came under control of the Muslim Mughal dynasty, and that lasted for the next 350 years. The Mughals were possibly descendants of the Mongols, and pretty much designed the India you recognize today, including the palaces at Delhi, Agra, Lahore, and the Grand Poobah, the Taj Mahal.
The Mughals were at one point fabulously wealthy, and that's where we get the word mogul from.
I found a really good crash course from John Green about the Mughal dynasty. I will put the links in the show notes. During this time, there were also great leaps forward in music, poetry, and advancement in textiles. We have the Mughals to thank for polka dots, checks, and florals. Then the British showed up. The British East India Company backed a couple of local coups, and in 1858, the last Mughal emperor was deposed by the British. The British Raj replaced the Mughal dynasty. To be fair, there were some good things, like infrastructure development, and not so good things like economic exploitation.
Yeah.
Eventually, there was widespread resistance. This is where Mahatma Gandhi and his commitment to nonviolence come in.
These intimate pictures of Gandhi, once more in the limelight as the result of his hunger strike, give you an idea of how frail the little Hindu leader was when he began his fast.
And it was successful. In 1947, India declared its independence from Britain.
As Lord Mountbatten said, with the departure of the British forces, the outward and visible sign of British rule in India disappears, and its place is taken by something much more valuable, a really great friendship between the British and the Indians.
Then went through a process called the partition. That divided India and Pakistan along religious lines, Hindus in India, Muslims in Pakistan. But the geographical split also forced 15 million people to move to one side of the border or the other. And between 500,000 to 2 million people died in the associated violence of that whole schlemiel.
It's one of those ideas that sounds good to a bureaucrat, but then when it plays out, it's ugly.
Yeah, it reminded me of our episode about Lebanon where it talked about the border just appearing one day and people being like, oh, I'm on the other side of that. Okay.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to leave the village that my family has been living in for generations and try to go forge out another piece of ground over there somewhere.
Yeah. India is now a democratic republic with a parliamentary system, a president, and a prime minister. And thus ends our history lesson. Let's talk about fun stuff to do in India.
All right.
You might recall from third grade social studies class that India has a monsoon season.
Oh, yeah.
That means lots and lots of rain.
Are we going during monsoon season?
We are not going during monsoon season. We are also not going during the summer, which is described as incendiary and hairdryer hot.
I can see from your face that that's not going to sit well.
I mean, the travel experts all seem to agree the best time to visit is between October, November, and early March. To try to understand India, again, country masquerading as a continent.
Yeah, the impossible task of understanding India.
Yeah, that. I turned to two travel guides, Lonely Planet and The Rough Guide.
Yep.
Each of those books is between 2,000 and 3,000 pages.
Wow.
For context, when I look at travel guides, they're usually around 400, 600, something like that.
Yeah.
2,000 to 3,000 pages.
It's a brick. Yeah.
If you want to travel to India, I do recommend getting your hands on one of these cinder block books and educating yourself. A trip to India is not a small undertaking. The shortest recommended itinerary I saw was 2 weeks. The next level up was 3 to 4 weeks. And there was also a detailed plan for a 6-month stay, which is how long a tourist visa lasts.
So on one hand, that sounds like an outrageously long period of time. On the other hand, if somebody was going to, say, go to the United States and try to experience all of the United States, that's going to take a while.
Yeah, weeks, years, a lifetime. The top suggestion from pretty much everybody is to visit the Golden Triangle, which just based on the name, I'm like, okay, that sounds good.
Sure.
That's a route in the north that connects the cities of New Delhi, Jaipur, and Agra. It includes medieval monuments, Mughal forts that look like something out of Aladdin. They're all turrets and domes and beautiful stonework, bazaars with jewelry and beautiful garments, and of course, the Taj Mahal. I'll put links in show notes to resources for that. But I thought we could talk about 3 cultural things you can enjoy both while visiting India and at home because they've been exported to the rest of the world, just in case you can't get to India anytime soon.
Right.
Those 3 things are food, Bollywood movies, and yoga.
Oh, I like all of those things.
Same. So, like everything else in India, when I started digging in, things kind of spiraled out of control. And even talking about the food isn't simple.
Right.
Unless we want to say something like, Indian food is delicious. The end. Which is true.
Please enjoy.
In the US and the UK, when you eat at an Indian restaurant, the menu usually has everything, right? There's meat cooked in the tandoor oven. There are spicy curries made with yogurt. There are breads like naan and roti. There are rice dishes like biryani and pulao. And there's all the condiments and chutneys.
Right.
Everything you could think of when you think of Indian food.
All of it.
In India, all of those dishes probably would not show up on the same table. Each region has its own approach to cuisine. In the south, we saw this when we talked about Sri Lanka, the curries are usually made with coconut milk, and they're seasoned more with herbs like lemongrass and curry leaves, and they're served with rice. In the north, curries are made with yogurt, and they're spicier, so things like butter chicken and Rogan Josh. And those are usually served with bread. The times I've eaten at an Indian restaurant, I've always had like chicken tikka masala and rice and naan.
Sure.
Wish it all together.
Of course, yeah.
I don't want to say I'm doing it wrong, but maybe we're doing it wrong.
Maybe.
Along the coastline of India, the food is primarily vegetarian. And in Mumbai, which used to be Bombay, there's an Iranian tradition that I'm going to be talking about later when we get to books. If you want to explore the history of Indian cuisine and how it migrated to the rest of the world, I want to recommend a book. It's called Curry, A Tale of Cooks and Conquerors by Lizzie Collingham. This book is fun because it delves into the history of 8 iconic Indian dishes that are eaten in the rest of the world and talks about how history and different invaders led to this version of this dish. It's packed with really fascinating stories, and there's a recipe at the end of each chapter so you can make that particular dish. I found it really charming.
That sounds like a food-centric look at an idea that we've talked about often, where multiple invaders take over a region and it improves the music and the food.
Yeah. The thing that I found really interesting is that you could say that butter chicken is not like a indigenous, authentic Indian dish, except it is eaten in India.
Right.
It's just that it got transformed by the influences of the British. You know what we need now?
Now that we've eaten?
Yeah.
What's that?
A spectacle.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, get on the dance floor. 1, 2, 3, 4, get on the dance floor. Booty shake the booty.
Let's talk about Bollywood movies.
Okay.
The name Bollywood is a mashup of Bombay and Hollywood.
Yeah.
And it's where Indian movie magic is made. Bollywood films usually blend lots of genres. So you get romance, drama, action, and comedy, plus singing and dancing,
Yeah.
all woven into the story.
Yeah.
But beyond being super entertaining and colorful, the movies usually tackle cultural and social issues too. If you wanted to immerse yourself in the world of Indian movies, you can go on a Bollywood tour in Mumbai.
Oh, that's fun.
They take you behind the scenes to learn the history of their film industry. You can watch the pros at work on the set. You can see a Bollywood dance show and drive through the neighborhood of the mansions of Bollywood stars.
Well, that sounds delightful.
And some of the packages also include a dance lesson.
When are we doing that?
I gotta say, I'm very tempted. I found a few solid lists of where to start with Bollywood movies if you want to have a little film fest of your own. I'll put those in show notes. But Dave, I know you have a favorite.
I do have a favorite. I don't know if you've seen RRR. Oh, it's so good. It is a spectacular action movie with just crazy over-the-top stunts and sort of set pieces. It also has like sort of an emotional side to it. It's sort of, I mean, it's what you're talking about, where it's like there is an enormous amount of spectacle. There's music and dancing. The action heroes suddenly start dancing in the middle of the movie.
And that dance scene in particular kind of contributes to their character development and establishes their bromance.
Yeah. And then there's a little bit of like sort of social commentary and historical set pieces, I guess.
And kind of some brutal violence too.
Yeah. It's incredible. It is an amazing motion picture. In the end, we ended up sort of spontaneously applauding like 2 or 3 times during this movie because it's so fantastic. It's so amazing. And I feel like I'm doing a poor job of selling it, but I swear to you, if you like action adventure at all, if you are tolerant of action adventures, you might want to see it. It's RRR.
And finally, at the complete opposite end of the spectrum from that is yoga.
Oh, yeah.
The origins of yoga go back 5,000 years to our old pals in the Indus Valley civilization. The earliest references to yoga are from a book called the Rig Veda. It's one of the sacred books of Hinduism from 1500 BCE.
Wow. I had no idea. I mean, yoga is one of those things you could have told me was invented in 1963, and I'd be like, yeah, that tracks.
Well, the modern version of it kind of came about then. Over the centuries since that first book, yoga evolved to include meditation and spiritual awareness.
Yeah.
And the combination of poses and breathing that we're familiar with, that's hatha yoga, that was beginning to be codified during the medieval period. So also quite old.
Yeah. So theoretically, Thomas Jefferson could have done hatha yoga.
Oh, yeah.
That's surprising. That's hard to think about.
The founding fathers doing downward
somehow,
dog.
When I think about Benjamin Franklin doing a down dog, I'm like, yeah, that tracks.
Completely. Hold my spectacles. In the late 19th century, during the time of the British Raj, Indian monks started traveling and spreading their knowledge, and namaste yoga spread in popularity all over the world. If you wanted to practice yoga in India, Rishikesh, on the bank of the Ganges, is considered the birthplace of yoga and has the most authentic yoga schools and ashrams. That city is also where the Beatles studied transcendental meditation and wrote the songs for the White Album. You can still visit the ruins of Maharishi's ashram, which is now known as the Beatles Ashram. And you can also go to the International Yoga Festival and participate in massive yoga sessions.
That sounds amazing.
Before we close, I've got 2 words for you.
Okay.
Tiger safaris.
Oh, yeah.
India is home to almost 75% of the world's tiger population, and there are dozens of areas designated as tiger reserves. As of last year, there were 3,682 wild tigers in India.
That's both fantastic, and also I think there should be 30, 40 times as many tigers.
In their own city.
Tiger City, that'd be great. Yeah.
You probably don't want to run into a tiger on your own.
No.
But there are national parks where you can go on a jeep safari to safely see these big cats up close. General opinion seems to be that Ranthambore National Park in northwest India is the best place to go. But there are a bunch of other options. I'll put a link to some videos in show notes. It is spectacular. If you are a person who hears the words tiger safari and thinks, sounds nice, but not for me, I have an alternative for you. India has the world's largest English language readership in the world, and the publishing industry is ginormous. So you can always go book shopping.
Oh, that's nice.
I'll put a link about good bookshops in the show notes. That is our India 101.
Nice.
Your words mean nothing in the shade of doubt. What truth we tell when the words come out? Two truths and a lie.
I'm about to say 3 statements, 2 of which are true. Mel doesn't know which one is a lie. Here we go. Statement 1, Salvador Dali, the great artist, the man of the melting clocks.
And the awesome mustache.
Once designed an ashtray for Air India. He was paid in part in peacocks. Statement 2. According to the government of India, dolphins are non-human persons and as such have the right to life and liberty.
I love that.
Yeah. And statement 3, the longest regular bus trip in history was from London to Calcutta.
Oh my goodness.
Now Kolkata. Yeah. It was approximately 10,000 miles or 16,000 kilometers one way. If you're rough with distances, that's about 4 times the mileage from New York to LA.
I don't want to take the bus across town, so that sounds pretty bad to me.
So let's go through these one at a time. First one, Salvador Dali once designed an ashtray for Air India. He was paid in part in peacocks.
I'm going to say that's true because I feel like he was not picky.
Okay, so we're going to get there, but it's going to be a minute. Return with us now to 1967. Air travel is glamorous and exciting, and maybe the most captivating carrier is Air India. Passengers ate caviar and drank champagne and smoked Havana cigars, and they were attended by stewardesses in saris and bouffant hairdos. Some of the amenities were designed by Hermès and Christian Dior. Air India was the expression of posh at that time. And about this time in Manhattan, the head of PR for Air India runs into Salvador Dali.
As you do.
As you do. I couldn't find out how they met, but I assume it was at a party thrown by Don Draper. Or somebody a lot like him. There's gorgeous women and sleek suits and swinging jazz and martinis and probably a cloud of secondhand smoke. And the head of PR, his name is Jat Singh, he says, "Oh my goodness, Salvador Dali." And he introduces himself and they get to talking, and then Singh says, "You know what? You could design something for us. We will commission a work from you for our passengers. Maybe, I don't know, an ashtray. What would it take to commission a limited edition ashtray designed by the great Salvador Dali?" Name your price. And Dali thinks for a moment. And in my imagination, he probably considered a peacock and maybe two. But then he settled on his final price, a price fit for one of the greatest artists of his time, one elephant.
Of course.
To design an ashtray, Salvador Dali wants an elephant. And Singh looks at him and he smiles and he says, I think I can do that, but I have to ask, why do you want an elephant?
Mm-hmm.
And this is a quote. Dali reportedly said, I wish to keep him in my olive grove and watch the patterns of shadows the moonlight makes through the twigs on his back.
You beautiful, crazy genius.
Yeah. Now, I can't imagine that Singh had the kind of sign-off he would need to get Salvador Dali an elephant, but they worked it out. Dali designed an ashtray. It's porcelain with a snake around the top and two legs to it. And viewed one way, the legs look like swans, and viewed another way, they look like elephants. We'll have photos on the show notes. Only 500 were ever made. You can still find them on sale online from time to time. And Air India sent him an elephant. The poor beast was flown from Bangalore to Geneva and then trucked to Dali's home in Catalonia, Spain. When he got there, the mayor of Dali's hometown held a 3-day holiday and a parade.
Do we know what happened to the elephant?
So eventually, Dali either got bored or impatient with his new guest. And in 1971, the elephant ended up at the Barcelona Zoo.
Okay, good. Happy ending for the elephant. I was worried about him.
So statement 2. According to the government of India, dolphins are non-human persons and as such have the right to life and freedom.
True.
Which we now know is true. Yeah. About a decade ago, the Indian government adopted a very pro-cetacean stance. They recognized that dolphins are highly sensitive and intelligent. Research shows that they have sophisticated communication and a sense of community and self-awareness and the ability for abstract thought. Previously, humans had thought only humans had those qualities. Surprise! Turns out animals are pretty great, and maybe we should be nicer to them. India has since banned all entertainment that involves the capture of dolphins, orcas, and the like, and they toughened up their laws protecting them at sea. It's now illegal to catch any cetacean in Indian waters. India is one of several countries that have banned the capture and import of cetaceans, joining Costa Rica, Hungary, Chile, and most recently the indigenous leaders of New Zealand, Tonga, Tahiti, and the Cook Islands.
Nice.
Yeah. There's also a movement in India to extend the personhood status to elephants.
I'm for elephants.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like, any image of an elephant will make me start crying.
Yeah.
Just because they're so kind and big and sweet and smart.
Yeah.
And they remember things.
Yes. I, for one, welcome our elephant friends. And then finally, the longest regular bus trip in history was from London to Calcutta.
Yikes, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah, the inaugural trip left London on April 15th, 1957, with about 20 brave passengers. For £85, which is somewhere around 2,500 pounds or $3,000 today, you and your luggage would be transported for 50 days.
Oh my gosh.
I think it's a little bit better than you're thinking. So first, meals were included.
Okay.
The bus traveled from England to Belgium and then through West Germany, because West Germany, Austria, Yugoslavia, Bulgaria, Turkey, Iran, and then Afghanistan, Pakistan, and finally India.
I would like to see all those places.
Yeah, especially in 1957.
Yeah, that seems really fun.
Yeah, I imagine it was quite an adventure. The bus was relatively swanky for 1957.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody had a bunk.
Oh, that changes everything.
Yeah, there was a small kitchen. There was an observation lounge up front.
Just the name Observation Lounge makes me feel a little tingly.
And curiously, there's what was described as a reading nook.
Huh.
Yeah. Sounds better, doesn't it?
It sounds a lot better.
Yeah. And there were planned stops along the journey. So, for instance, there was shopping in Salzburg, Vienna, Istanbul, Tehran, and Kabul.
Sounds very romantic.
Yeah. I'm guessing they stopped for Cheetos and T-shirts.
Oh, I bet people dress nicely.
There is a picture of them boarding that first bus, and they do look pretty nice. The bus from London to Calcutta took its last trip in 1976.
I bet that was groovy during the 60s and 70s.
There was one point where they were calling that bus the hippie bus.
Yeah, I bet they were.
Yeah. If you're interested in driving across Europe and a substantial chunk of Asia, there is a travel agency operating now called Adventures Overland that can help you out. Once a year, they do a group car caravan from Gorakhpur in India to London. You can rent a car or bring your own. They take you the long way. You go through Nepal and China, through Russia for about a week.
Wow.
And then on through Turkey and Austria and Germany and France on your way to the UK.
How cool is that?
Yeah, it's a 10-week trip for a little under $35,000 a person.
Oh.
Yeah. There are events along the way, like air ballooning in Italy and caving in China. If you're listening to this on release day, their 2024 trip, which started in April, is scheduled to pull into London today.
Wow.
Yeah, this very day. We will link to it in show notes if you want to learn about next year's trip. That's Two Truths and a Lie.
Acura's all-new ADX, a compact SUV that isn't just built for one thing, it's precision-crafted for everything. To escape the grind with available all-wheel drive. To go with your flow with available Google built-in.
Hey Google, turn it up.
Okay, turning up the volume. And crafted to be heard with an available Bang & Olufsen premium sound system. The all-new Acura ADX, crafted to match your energy. Acura, precision-crafted performance.
Take your vibes on go, 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 go.
Google is a trademark of Google LLC.
Come with me and I'll sing you a song of 5 books we love. I love a good sit and I love a good read with 5 books we love.
My first recommendation is Loot by Tanya James. This is historical fiction that explores imperialism through the life of a woodcarver in India. When we meet our hero Abbas, it's 1794 in Mysore in southern India. He's a young man. He comes from a family of woodcarvers. His father and his brothers make useful things like cabinets and beds.
Sure.
But Abbas is an artist cursed with curiosity. He likes to carve fanciful toys.
Oh, that's nice.
Elephants, tigers, horses that move when you turn a hand crank. His father tells him to stick to the family business because, quote, toys only bring trouble. Those words are hanging in the air like a thought balloon when the Sultan's guards show up. They escort Abbas from his family home to the summer palace. It seems that Abbas's toys have caught the eye of the Sultan.
Oh.
We need to talk about real history for a second.
Okay.
At this point, the British East India Company controlled only a small part of India, mostly in the north and the east. But they wanted the south, and the major force in their way was Tipu Sultan, known as the Tiger of Mysore. I want to read a paragraph from early in the book to give you a sense of the voice and set the scene.
Okay.
Tipu's kingdom barely survived the most recent war with the English, and talk of still another is always on the horizon. The people never know who is coming from where to take what from whom. All they can do is submit to power each time it changes hands. This one wants a new calendar. That one wants his face struck on a coin. With every alteration, large and small, the ground unfirms itself beneath their feet, making it nearly impossible for anyone to leave a lasting mark. At the moment, Abbas has no interest in leaving a mark. All he wants is to stay out of trouble, though it is perhaps a little late for that.
That's a nice paragraph.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
At the palace, Abbas is apprenticed to a French clockmaker. His name is Lucien Dulez, and together, they're ordered by the Sultan to build Mysore's first automaton. They're tasked with carving a ferocious wooden tiger attacking a British soldier. All the better for Tipu to show his strength and fortitude in the face of the encroaching British East India Company.
Yeah.
That tiger, it's essentially an enormous toy, opens up Abbas's world to artistry, travels, romance, and as his father predicted, some troubles.
Yeah, because now he's making artifacts for kings. That's a big step up.
I love this book for many reasons, which I will now enumerate. Not the least of which is that it lets me use one of my favorite literary terms, Bildungsroman.
Like a Colosseum, a Bildungsroman.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. No, Dave. Bildungsroman is a German word that means novel of education.
Oh, I could use one.
It's like a coming-of-age story, but it has a very specific purpose.
Okay.
That term refers to stories that trace the moral and psychological development of a character from childhood to adulthood, like Jane Eyre, Great Expectations, To Kill a Mockingbird, Harry Potter.
Versus something like Catcher in the Rye, which is a coming-of-age novel, but does not necessarily track the character's growth.
Exactly.
All right.
Given that this is a Bildungsroman, it has the big sweep of a 19th century novel. It moves from India to Rouen, France, and to England, and each section has a slightly different genre feel to it. So it does have coming-of-age elements. It's also a war story and an adventure tale. Part of it is told through the journal of a sailor aboard a ship that belongs to the East India Company.
So it's also epistolary.
It is a little bit epistolary.
So many phrases.
I know, we sound like such book nerds. I also really enjoyed the relationship between Abbas and the clockmaker Lucien. These two are halfway in danger the entire time they're carving Tipu's tiger. But they find a way to work together, and ultimately, they really grow to care for each other. That relationship and what Abbas learns from Lucien has ripple effects throughout his life. Finally, one of the best things about this book is that Tipu's tiger is real.
Really?
Yes, you could go to the Victoria and Albert Museum in London right now and see it. The carved wooden soldier is almost life-size, and he's on the verge of having his throat bitten by a painted tiger. The tiger is really beautiful. It almost looks like it leapt off of a carousel, except that it's mauling a soldier. There are mechanisms and a bellows inside that make the man's hand move while he emits a wailing sound, and the tiger grunts.
That's fantastic. And I bet it was amazing back in the day.
The tiger's body also hides a small pipe organ and a keyboard with ivory keys so that someone could play music while the attack was going on. It is as spectacular as you think it is. There's a video on YouTube. I will put it in the show notes.
How much do you want to play Eye of the Tiger on that tiger?
I also love the pettiness of Tipu being like, I am the tiger of Mysore. Look at my amazing automaton that has never been seen in India before. And it's a tiger eating a British soldier.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's the real artifact, the real tiger. Do we know how much of this story is that artifact's story?
Yes. So the tiger is real. Tipu is real. The wars that were happening, all real. No one really knows who carved the tiger.
Oh.
And that's where the author kind of jumped off into the world of imagination.
That's amazing.
And the whole book tells the story of how the tiger, when it's finished, moves through the world and what happens to all of the people whose lives it touches. This is one of those books that reminded me of reading as a kid, the kind that grabs you and you're instantly transported into the pages and the rest of the world disappears and you forget all of your chores and other things you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Is completely immersive. And it's really sneaky because I got a really good history lesson and saw the inside of imperialism without feeling like I was being taught any kind of lessons,
right,
even though they're baked in there.
Yeah.
It just feels like a thrilling, swashbuckling, romantic story. It's Loot by Tanya James. If you read and enjoyed The Last Watchman of Old Cairo from our Egypt episode, I think this book will make it onto your list of favorites too.
Here's book 2.
My first book is City of Jinns, A Year in Delhi by William Dalrymple. First, we need to talk about William Dalrymple. William Dalrymple is a Scotsman who fell hard for India in the 1980s.
Huh.
Yeah, when he was 17, he visited Delhi for the first time. He tells a story in City of Jinns that I think completely explains why he was taken with Delhi. It is the very first thing in the book. I'm going to read it to you. You might want to know that a Sufi is a religious person. It was in the citadel of Feroz Shah Kotla that I met my first Sufi. Her Sadruddin had weasel eyes and a beard as tangled as a myna's nest. The mystic sat me down on a carpet, offered me tea, and told me about the jinns. He said that when the world was new and Allah had created mankind from clay, he also made another race, like us in all things, but fashioned from fire. The jinns were spirits, invisible to the naked eye. To see them, you had to fast and pray. For 41 days, Sadruddin had sat without eating, half naked in the foothills of the Himalayas, and later he had spent 41 days up to his neck in the river Jumna. One night, asleep in a graveyard, he was visited by the king of jinns. He was black, as tall as a tree, and he had one eye in the center of his forehead, said the pir. The jinn offered me anything I wanted, but every time I refused. Could you show me a jinn? I asked. Certainly, replied the pir, but you would run away. So Dalrymple moved to India a few years after hearing that story, as I think we all would, when he was 22. And he has been writing about India since then for the last 35 years or so. And he's done well for himself. He's won a shelf full of awards. He's written and hosted documentaries about India for the BBC. He's a lecturer at Brown. And at least according to Goodreads, his books are uniformly good. After 10 books, he's batting around 4.1 stars. When I was exploring books for this episode, I started reading a few of his works. His most recent is about the East India Company. It's called The Anarchy. It tells the, I want to say shocking, even though the action has been over for about 150 years, the shocking story of the rise of the world's greatest corporate power. I started to read that and found out that the story in my head of Britain being a posh superpower when they first met the poor downtrodden Indians was the inverse of the truth.
I remember when you were reading that at breakfast and you were like, whoa.
Yeah.
Backwards.
Yes. Dalrymple might be most famous for his book, White Mughals, Love and Betrayal in 18th Century India. That's a nonfiction book about a love affair between a British East India Company official and a hyper-batty noblewoman. Also a good read. But eventually I settled on City of Jinns. It's one of his first books. It came out in the early 90s. And it is many things. It's a coming-of-age story. It's about his first year in India with his wife. They moved to Delhi together. So it's also an expat story, a fish-out-of-water tale. It's a travelogue. He explores his new city and he points out landmarks and talks about them and the people there. It's a history because he's a historian and that's what's interesting to him. And it's a bit of a cold case mystery. The mystery is what happened to Delhi? Yeah, there are signs everywhere of a once affluent city that is now obviously having hard times. He ends up describing emperors and eunuchs and his very particular landlady. It feels very transportative, like you're walking on the streets of Delhi with him and looking at the magic and chaos and smelling the food from the street vendors. All of these threads tie together into this kind of rich exploration, kind of a scrapbook of tales. The writing is really solid. Dalrymple is very good with a story, whether he's piecing together ancient history or talking about somebody he just met. There are characters in this book that I don't think I'll ever forget. And there are some surprisingly emotional passages. There's a story in here that killed me about a woman who lived under a tree. that story just like came out of nowhere and stabbed me in the guts and just left me on the floor.
Awesome.
Yeah. The book is a portrait of a city that Dalrymple loves. He is doing his best to get you to love it too. It's City of Gins, A Year in Delhi by William Dalrymple.
Here's book 3.
My next recommendation is Dishoom, Cookery Book and Highly Subjective Guide to Bombay by Shamil Thakrar, Kavi Thakrar, and Navid Nasser. Before I tell you the particulars of this book, it needs some setup. Today, the port city on India's west coast is called Mumbai, and it's the capital of the state of Maharashtra. But in the 17th century, when the British took control of the city, they called it Bombay. It's famous for Bollywood, which we already discussed, street food, and architecture, including landmarks like the Gateway of India. That's an Islamic arch that sits on the waterfront overlooking the Arabian Sea, and a train station built in the spiky, ornate Italian Gothic style in 1887. That was the headquarters of the Grand Indian Peninsular Railway.
Wow.
I love the grand way they named stuff in the 19th century.
Yeah. It sounds so fancy.
It's pretty fancy. In 1995, India changed the name from Bombay to Mumbai to leave behind the vestiges of colonial rule and honor the city's cultural heritage. But the idea of old Bombay with its palm trees and Victorian architecture is still very dreamy and alluring. So that's that.
Yeah.
Now we need to talk about Dishoom.
Okay.
Dishoom is a restaurant group founded in the UK in 2010 by two cousins, Shamil and Kavi Thakrar. They are all about paying homage to the Irani cafes of old Bombay. They have 9 locations of their restaurant in the UK right now, and they have a Michelin star.
Oh, nice. So their food is reflective of 2 cultures, the Iranian culture and the Indian culture.
Yes, and it's very specific to time and place. Here's the story of why they were inspired to start Dishoom.
Okay.
The story of the disappearing Irani cafes has a certain wistful poetry. Iranis crossed the Arabian Sea to Bombay to escape religious persecution. They work in the homes of established Parsi families, leaving to set up their own cafes, often on street corners which happen to be shunned by Hindus for some superstition. These Irani cafes become an irreplaceable Bombay institution, one which earns a fond place in the hearts of Bombayites, regardless of caste, class, religion, or race, by providing a cheap snack, a decent meal, or just a cup of chai and cool refuge from the street. Fans turn slowly. Paneled walls are hung with sepia family portraits and mirrors. Wealthy businessmen, sweaty taxiwalas, and courting couples sit close to each other on rickety bentwood chairs at chipped marble tables. Students eat breakfast, while high court lawyers read their briefs. Families have lunch, and writers find their characters. As the decades wear on, eventfully, the Irani cafes peak in number in the 1960s and then start closing down. From none to 400 and back down to 25 within a century.
Wow.
I want to go there so much. So now we come to this cookbook.
Yeah.
It is like no other cookbook I've ever seen. It's a travel guide to modern Mumbai and a romantic travelogue of old Bombay with recipes. You could literally go to Mumbai with this book in your hands, and it would guide you to eat in some of the best restaurants. Then go on walking tours to look at an Art Deco cinema from 1938, to visit an iconic garden from Bombay's golden era, or wander the Ballard Estate, which is also known as the London of Mumbai.
That sounds like a really good trip.
And it's a really cool book. Each section corresponds to a meal and part of the day. So breakfast, mid-morning snacks, lunch, sunset snacks, first, second, and third dinner.
Whoa.
I really like the way these guys think about eating all day. They start with a walking tour of a Mumbai neighborhood and stop at a specific restaurant and talk about the menu and the history of the place. And then the prose jumps back in time to describe what it would have been like in that neighborhood of Old Bombay. And then the end of each chapter features recipes inspired by the cafes that have been adopted for the home kitchen. Throughout the whole thing, there are really beautiful color and black and white photos, and it's a mix of vintage and new. It's pictures of the food and bustling street scenes and the interiors of the cafes.
That all sounds really delightful.
And the writing is fantastic. I want to read a little bit. This essay is called A Gentle Stroll on Chowpatty at Sunset with Plentiful Snacks. I like the plentiful snacks part.
Yeah, same.
So this is a good example of the travelogue parts of each chapter.
Okay.
It's written in the second person, which is really engaging. It is almost 5 p.m. You may be feeling pleasantly tired. The evening sea breeze hasn't yet picked up, although it is teasing you with its occasional promises to do so. The sun, having lost some of its ferocity, slinks contentedly towards the horizon. At this time of day, Bombay relaxes and takes to the seafront to stretch its legs. Now is time to make your way onto the beach, to partake in the serious business of idle pleasures. When you've decided what you'd like to eat, you can savor it in the open air, surrounded by all kinds of Bombay life. The flavors of buttery pav bhaji or spicy bell made doubly delicious by the view of the curving Golden Bay as the sun goes down.
That's really nice.
Yeah, the joy of this book is the storytelling and the photographs.
Yeah.
It seems like making the food just be a bonus. But there are curries and kebabs, these soft, buttery buns that they have at breakfast time, and spicy chutneys. And everything looks really manageable for the home cook. They've done a really good job adapting these recipes. One of the most popular dishes at the restaurant is a bacon naan roll, and I am pretty excited about trying that at some point. It's homemade naan bread stuffed with cream cheese, bacon, and tomato chili jam.
What could possibly be wrong about that?
You can buy kits to make it at home on their website.
Oh, great.
There's also a chicken tikka recipe that looks really good and super easy. Tikka is usually cooked in a tandoori oven, but you can approximate that on the grill or under the broiler, which seems really good for summer. And there's a basmati rice pudding with caramel and blueberry compote that I think I might know someone who would love that.
Is it me? I think it's me.
I read this book front to back and was transported. It gave me that sort of flutter in my chest that I get when the yearning feeling comes on.
Yeah.
I want to visit this magical place with the palm trees and the jazz music and all different kinds of people mingling to eat good food. That's how I felt the whole time I was reading it. Oh.
Yeah.
The book is Dishoom, Cookery Book and Highly Subjective Guide to Bombay by Shamil Thakrar, Kavi Thakrar, and Navid Nasser. I should also mention we are going to London in the fall, and we are definitely going to eat at Dishoom, and I will report back in an episode of The Library of Lost Time.
Book 4.
My next book is The Last Dragoners of Bazaar by Indra Das. It's a novella. It's about 120 pages, and it came out just last year. It's about a child. His name is Rue, and Rue believes that his family might be some kind of magic, but they won't discuss it. In the first few paragraphs, the narrator is standing in front of a bush with his grandmother. The bush has flowering pods on it. In each flowering pod is a tiny sleeping dragon.
Stop it.
Yeah, it's a dragon tree. And the story reads, "It was the most beautiful thing I'd seen in my life. I remember the immensity of the happiness I felt looking at this flower-like fetus of a dragon growing off a tree tended to by my grandmother, knowing that dragons were actually real and grew on trees, wondering if people knew. I couldn't really believe it, which is why the memory became a dream. I convinced myself it wasn't a true memory because dragons don't exist. Why didn't I ask my grandmother later? My family? I did, of course, and they said, 'Dragons aren't real. You had a dream.' If the dragon tree was a real thing, and my family had the privilege of caring for such a marvel, why would they only show it to me once, when I was young, just old enough to know about dragons from books and cartoons and movies on pirated VHS tapes? Dragons aren't real. And that kind of sets up the primary conflict of the story, right? Rue wonders if he is, in fact, from a magical family, and that makes him a stranger in his own house, and it makes him a stranger in the neighborhood, because that's not the kind of thing you can say to the local kids. Rue and his family live in a maze-like house with unusual but not entirely inexplicable details. There's a tapestry that shows stars that aren't visible from Earth. There's a bone dagger. There's a display of reptile teeth.
Fun.
Yeah. Rue's parents tell him stories that sound like fables, but maybe they aren't. And there's a tea. There's a tea they call the Tea of Forgetfulness. What? Which is probably not just a brand name. And also it makes the narrator a bit unreliable. Mm-hmm. And Rue slowly comes to find out his situation as he grows up. So from the title, you might think this is a fantasy book, but it's mostly a coming-of-age story, and I think an allegory. I haven't read anything by the author that suggests what I'm about to say is true, so grain of salt. But it seems to me that the story is a fantastic metaphor for growing up in Kolkata. The story's set there in the late 90s, and the author grew up there. I suspect that it feels like there has recently been magic in Kolkata, right? Mm-hmm. That grand, mystical, hard-to-understand things happened, maybe in your own living room or maybe down the street, and maybe the magic is still there. It's just hard to see. And nobody talks about it, right? It's not hard to imagine growing up there and wondering why my parents' history is inaccessible to me. Mm-hmm. I also imagine that if you grew up with that, it would be easy to think that it is just your imagination, that the magic is just some sort of trick of memory, right? Was there really a dragon bush here? Is it true? The other book that I read for this episode, City of Jinns, and this one were talking to each other quite a lot for me. Mm-hmm. City of Jinns felt like it was telling me stories of larger-than-life characters who used to roam India and the outrageous things they did, these like parades of zebras and ostriches and thrones made of jade and taking over entire cities in one drunken night, that kind of thing. And this book talked about what it was like to grow up there after the magic was gone, metaphorically. This is the second book from Indra Das. The first one was The Devourers. That one is about a werewolf who recruits a history professor to help him write his memoirs.
Well, that sounds really fun, too.
Yeah. The Washington Post called that one of the best science fiction books of 2015, and it is now on my TBR. As for this one, if you enjoy magical realism mixed with your coming-of-age immigrant stories, you'll probably like this. It's The Last Dragoners of Bazaar by Indra Das.
And now book 5.
My final recommendation is The Bandit Queens by Parini Shroff.
Oh, I remember when you were reading that, and I was a little jealous.
It's really fun. It's an unusual crime novel and a celebration of female friendship set in modern India. Here's the setup for anyone who's not familiar. A village in India is all abuzz with rumors that Gita killed her no-good husband.
Yeah.
She didn't. 5 years ago, he walked out of the village and she has no idea where he is. Conveniently for him, he also left her saddled with his debts.
Oh.
But Gita's reputation for badassery has benefits. No one messes with her anymore.
Right.
And none of the men want to marry her. And to Gita, that is cause for celebration. Since her rat husband took off, she has been exploring who she is and what she likes when she gets to decide. I want to read you a little excerpt from the book.
Okay.
Eventually, through discovering her talents for jewelry making, salient truths emerged. There was a Gita before Ramesh's hands had found her, and that Gita was still alive, and even if no one else was interested in knowing her, Gita was. She found extra salt pleased her palate. She made it a point not to apologize. She liked music and danced to her old radio to jumpstart her mornings. Biscuits and tomato lays were a perfectly acceptable dinner some nights. Her grapes, whether sour or fair, were her grapes.
That's really good.
She's awesome, and she is clearly beginning to live her best life.
Yeah.
But everyone thinking she's a murderess does have some repercussions.
Every gift has its cost, huh?
Mm-hmm. The other women in the village want her to help them get rid of their rotten husbands. And they're not above blackmail and threats to convince her.
Oh.
And so begins a daisy chain of hijinks, some with very serious consequences. There are murder plots run amok, dangerous confrontations with a bootlegger, revelations of secrets, and very real, sobering accounts of domestic abuse. I found the writing really impressive. The author, Parini Shroff, delves into the sexism and misogyny that are just kind of baked into life.
Yeah.
Everyone just kind of shrugs their shoulders. That's how it is.
Yeah.
And she blends that with action scenes that verge on slapstick comedy.
Huh.
And there is a lot of really sharp, funny dialogue. And somehow it all works. One of the standout chapters is a big set piece that plays out like the climax of a caper movie. And it takes place during Diwali, the Festival of Lights, the biggest holiday of the year.
Yeah.
And even though the characters were in legitimate danger, it made me giggle. It was just so much fun.
That's great.
At the heart of the book is Gita's social circle. She's part of a group of women who received microloans to start small businesses. And I hear that and I think, oh, that's nice. They're like supportive of each other and they have this little group that meets to talk about their businesses.
Yeah.
No.
Oh.
These meetings are a masterclass in throwing shade. It's like a Bollywood version of the Mean Girls movie. The other women complain almost constantly about the burdens of caring for their husbands and their kids, but immediately follow it up with statements like, but I'm happy to do it. It's so rewarding. The joys of motherhood, such a blessing. One of them even says, until you've brought forth the gift of life, you're not complete. While looking pointedly at Gita, who was very clearly without children and husband. The book also made the caste system visible in a way that helped me understand how it works in real life on a daily basis. It also explored the tension between Muslim and Hindus and the way bribery is just part of making business work.
Yeah.
But all of these heavy topics are woven into the lives of the characters. To them, it's just normal. And they usually react with some kind of conversational zinger. Like, we're middle-aged housewives. Who's more invisible than us? We can get away with murder, literally. So I cast the movie version of this in my imagination.
I'm curious to hear how you worked Viggo Mortensen into this one.
I did not.
Oh, all right.
Viggo is absent from this one.
Ava Green?
No Ava Green.
Oh.
But get ready.
Okay.
Gita,
Yeah.
Jamila Jamil.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Her number one frenemy, Priyanka Chopra.
Yep.
And the romantic interest, Dev Patel,
Mhm.
because he should just be in everything.
Yeah.
One of the great joys of this book is that I never knew what was going to happen next. The stakes would go up another notch, and I'd think, how is Gita going to get out of this mess? Oh, I see. She's just making it worse. Okay. It's stakes upon stakes upon stakes. The more she tries to dig out, the more she gets in. It's fantastic. I found the combination of action and tenderness very effective, and Gita's redemption arc is a real pleasure to behold. That's The Bandit Queens by Parini Shroff. Before we wrap up, I want to quickly mention another novel that provides a peek inside a different community of women in India. It's The Widows of Malabar Hill by Sujata Massey. That's a mystery novel set in 1921 Bombay, featuring a plucky heroine named Perveen Mystery. It's a solid crime novel that explores the lot of women in 20th century India. And that would also be a fun one to pair up with Dishoom, because Dishoom talks so much about the 20s and 30s.
Those are 5 books we love set in India. Visit our show notes at strongsenseofplace.com for links and details. We will show you Dolly's ashtray. We'll show you a documentary that William Dalrymple produced about India for British television. We will tell you how to go on a tiger safari
And consider this your invitation to stop by our free Substack and join the conversation about good books and fun travel.
Mel, where are we headed for our next episode?
We are blasting off into outer space.
Awesome. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.
I'm Amy Nicholson, the film critic for the LA Times.
And I'm Paul Scheer, an actor, writer, and director. You might know me from The League, Veep, or my non-eligible for Academy Award role in Twisters.
We love movies, and we come at them from different perspectives.
Yeah, like Amy thinks that, Joe Pesci was miscast in Goodfellas, and I don't.
He's too old. Let's not forget that Paul thinks that Dune 2 is overrated.
It is.
Anyway, despite this, we come together to host Unspooled, a podcast where we talk about good movies, critical hits,
fan favorites, must-sees, and in case you missed them.
We're talking Parasite to Home Alone.
From Grease to The Dark Knight.
We've done deep dives on popcorn flicks. We've talked about why Independence Day deserves a second look.
And we've talked about horror movies, some that you've never even heard of, like Ganja and Hess.
So if you love movies like we do, come along on our cinematic adventure.
Listen to Unspooled wherever you get your podcasts.
And don't forget to hit the follow button.